That came as a real shock to me. So overachieving woman tries to do when they've had a serious illness. I threw myself back into work in a way that I probably shouldn't have in reflection now. And I worked very, very hard to hold on to a job at the end of the year after coming back from having breast cancer. It was a tough time. I'm not incredibly challenging.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Reinventors. I am with Sandra Peat, who is a brand expert and a consultant on all things brand, and she has a portfolio career background and currently is doing a PhD in brand strategy, as well as executive coaching for brand leaders. Now, I've probably not given the proper description there, Sandra. We will, as we talk about what you've done and how you've reinvented your career and your life, it will come out more about your story. And after all, reinvention is a continuous change, a process of change. So just to start, we started off this conversation, really. We have spoken before and kind of worked together a while back when I was doing Endurance Women. But I saw a brilliant post on LinkedIn where you described how you've reinvented yourself and your career over a number of years. So really, if you just sort of start, we can start by just seeing what was the reaction to that post? How was it received? And a little bit about what you said on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting when you sort of take a beat and a moment and think about how your career has developed and the lessons that you've taken along the journey. And I saw John Evans had done it, and I was like, oh, that's a really great idea. I'm 52 this year, done a lot of the stuff. Like, what does that journey look like? So, and what I realized was that that journey wasn't linear, which I sort of knew, but actually there were certain moments within it which had really just taken a moment to transition. They had pushed me in a direction that I hadn't necessarily wanted or thought I was going to go in. So rather than necessarily let those things take you down, it's really important to have a look at those things and see where they pointed and what else opened up for you as a result of them. So, it's always that thing when things happen that don't happen quite the way you want them to, it's very easy to get your legs taken out, basically. And,
Absolutely.
To really, find it quite hard to, to move on. But actually, a little bit of time around all of those things tends to help you get a bit of perspective. So I really wanted to share that. And yeah, I've had a lovely response, actually. I've had, really lovely feedback from people I don't know saying, thank you for sharing. It reflects a similar journey that I've been on with some of the big things that have happened in my life. A lovely old boss of mine turn up and say, hang on a minute, you forgot about our amazing work. And I was like, I totally did. Sorry about that. That was a mistake because it was excellent work and a lovely moment in my life. So yeah, those moments of reflection are important, I think. And I think if you do them at any point in your career, they're important. They give you a lot of learnings.
But I do think this is what Live to Reinvent is all about, actually, because I think there is a certain point, and 50 is a number where it often happens, where you are kind of either forced to reflect for other life things happening, or you've just been doing stuff for a long time and you might be thinking, I want to make a change or look back and consolidate. But I know at 50, you were recovering from cancer and redundancy. So they are two massive triggers for change in the sort of the reinvention world. So tell us about the cancer and the redundancy and what was going on at that time.
Yeah, I was coming out of lockdown, and I don't know if you remember back in 2022, but coming out of lockdown and I found a lump in my breast. So that came as a real shock to me. So I was very lucky in some regards as I managed to. It was fairly early on, but I had to have chemotherapy, and that really did floor me. It was quite intense, and I've written a lot about that journey actually on Medium if anyone's interested. And then I did what every overachieving woman tries to do when they've had a serious illness. I threw myself back into work in a way that I probably shouldn't have in reflection now. And I worked very, very hard to hold on to a job that ultimately wasn't to be, and was made redundant at the end of the year after coming back from having breast cancer. It was a tough time. I'm not incredibly challenging. And it really did leave me everything open for reinvention, but also reflection as well, having a real moment going, whatever I was doing in the past doesn't suit me anymore. It doesn't reflect the life that I need to live to be well, healthy, and inspired.
Yeah.
And I'd say those words like that was a really easy journey, and it absolutely wasn't.
I mean, I find it also interesting in terms of, we're on the wellness side, but I also really interested in the work side, which I'll come to in a minute, because I think there's what we call the new agers, which I'll talk to you about in a second. But I'm very interested in on how having a big illness like cancer, how it affects your attitude to your own body, to your wellness and to your fitness and everything. Did you change anything?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, I guess the main thing I've done is I've upped the ante on everything, really. Mainly, in fact, because of the diagnosis that I had means I can't go anywhere near HRT. So I'm basically white knuckling it through menopause. So things that, the things that I need to rely on are exercising every day. It's a non-negotiable. I can't really negotiate on that anymore. I mean, I was meditating. I had a pretty good meditation practice anyway, but I've really doubled down on that. All of it, eating well, I was pretty good at that anyway. So, they're the main things really. And I don't think I've ever been fitter or stronger actually right now. And I love it.
What do you do exercise-wise?
Oh, okay. I yoga, which I've always done, but particularly a lot of weights, a lot of circuit classes, but a real mixture of resistance and yoga really, and conditioning. I've got an amazing woman that I train with locally here. So it does make a massive difference. I'm running
No, I mean, I run loads and still not as much as I used to, but I still run. And I believe that it's good to have a good VO2 max, and it's really important. But running is definitely not the be all and end all. And it's definitely not the recommend for 50 plus, particularly if you're starting. Walking, but strength and conditioning, the stuff you're doing, the yoga, really important, really massively important.
Yeah.
And it's what in the menopause and postmenopause and perimenopause period we should be doing. So you had the double whammy of menopause and cancer and redundancy. God almighty.
I know, the triumvirate.
So, I mean, the thing is, what we've discovered in talking to people about reinvention, there's usually some big trigger. Now, you've had all of those.
Yeah.
And that bit, that's the thing that goes, right, something's got to change. But then it's the making the change. So you had a personal identity really with big corporate brands and businesses like Red Bull, Bacardi. Tell us a bit about the brands you'd worked with and that identity, and then we'll talk about the evolved new version of you.
So I mean, I describe myself ultimately as a brand strategist, but I have worked in big agencies. In my last role, I ran a strategy team, sat on the management board for an agency. And then also in previous years, I had worked at Bacardi in a client-side role in Red Bull before that. And I'd also set up my own agency. So it had quite a big career defined by work. And I think when you feel like you've had so much taken away from you from illness and then redundancy, you are left going, God, who am I? But I think what's interesting actually is, for me, it felt like there were lots of parallels to when I had a baby, when I had children earlier on, where you're into your work and then you're suddenly a mom and you're like, who am I? What is this? So I feel like those feelings weren't entirely new for me. I felt like I had been through that process before. So I knew at that point that, this was that moment of reckoning where you go, hey, this is stuff I do. It's important to me, but it's not who I am. Who I am is totally separate to all of that stuff. And, we are so conditioned to believe we are our work, and we absolutely not. And I think you work from that point, it doesn't make it any easier, but at least it leaves you with something when things totally out of your control, take your legs out, as I say.
Yeah. And I think it's important to sort of let go of whatever your identity is at this point in life and, to come back to who you actually are. That's the whole reinvention journey, really. It's kind of returning to, I think it's T.S. Eliot has a line in a poem somewhere about it, about returning back to the start, going back to the start, having learned a lot of things. And I mean, you had to, there's a lot of practical things you had to do in order to make these changes happen. So you did a PhD. So how did you sort of fund that? People might wonder, how do you do that when you've had cancer, you've had redundancy, and how did you practically make that happen at 50?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I am still doing it. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. It's a 4-year course and I'm 2 years in, so it's still happening. It's an executive PhD, so it's not like I'm not a full-time student. I do it in and around work. I still work. I consult, and I'm lucky in that regard that I was able to, keep things funded, to be really tax efficient, double down on my spending. So just being a bit more intentional about where my money goes, really. I was lucky I had a bit of saving to do the PhD, so that, and, obviously there's money that, when you leave a job, there's some money there sometimes if you're lucky. So, I feel like from that regard, I've been able to manage it by continuing to work. And the whole idea of doing the PhD is hopefully not a vanity project. It is essentially about giving me a body of knowledge that I can then use to create more work. So for me, it's an investment in myself that I will pay dividends in the end.
Yeah, and I think, what you said there is like, because often people say, well, it's all right for them. They look at somebody and think, well, it's easy for them to do that or whatever. But what you said there about being intentional about your money, about you said you were lucky to have savings. I'm sure it wasn't luck. You did that. A lot of people don't have savings. But all these things, it doesn't just happen with, like you say, I want to do it. It doesn't happen. I mean, you read your timeline and you seem like someone who bounces back seamlessly, but I'm sure it's not as simple as that. But do you think you do have a higher risk for, higher tolerance for risk or fear or resilience, or have you built that? Tell us about you and how you manage change.
Yeah, I mean, I actually love change. I get a bit bored, if I'm absolutely honest. So, my career is probably a little bit of a function of that as well, because I like the new thing. But I think the biggest lesson, and particularly now that I am working for myself, it's great having agency and working for yourself. But the thing you've absolutely got to get used to is living with uncertainty. You just do. That is the hardest thing, I think, and I just struggle with it. It's where you can't see the next paycheck necessarily, but you're doing the right thing, so you've just got to stick at what you're doing. It's like I'm not a poker player, but imagine it's like playing poker, going, I just got to hold, and I feel like I think that's still the hardest journey that I work through every day. And I hear this a lot from other people as well when I'm coaching them. The hardest work is when you're when no one's giving you praise, when no one's paying you for your work, there's no positive external motivation. It's really hard to keep going.
It is.
But sorry.
I think when people I was just saying there's lessons from that, because for people who are fearful of change and feeling stuck, I think there is a lesson to just go. Like, life is uncertain, as you know from having had a cancer diagnosis. I mean, things can change in an instant. So, but keeping with it, keeping focus, keeping your eyes on the goal is sounds to me as some of the drivers that helped you get through these changes.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think is really important is realizing that whatever security blanket you thought you had around a role or a position or a status in society, that is as vulnerable as anything, and actually, sorry.
Now more than ever, really, with AI and, the working world is literally been, you talk about your legs being pulled or the rug being pulled from underneath you. I mean, that's what's happening in the working world. So I think the more you've made change, the more you live to reinvent and be adaptable to change, you're in a better position to respond to this world that we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I think is really important is that, ultimately you're in a work situation, you get a monthly salary at the end of the day. It's really out of your control. You can do everything right and still be made redundant because technology changes, the work requirement changes. It's out of your control. At least if you are making decisions and taking risks, if it doesn't work out, it's on you. That feels much more like control than anything that I've done in the past. So for me, that's the thing that I focus on, and then also when I'm coaching people, I focus on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's and you're coaching leaders and executive leaders to do exactly what you've done, I guess. But how do you yourself, with what you've talked about, that uncertainty? You've got your meditation, you've got your exercise. Do you have day-to-day boundaries and sort of put habits that help not get burnt out? not, manage your health, your well-being and full longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I say, I've got a really strong meditation practice. I get up early every day, not really by choice, but because of some menopause. But I've made my peace with it, and I meditate and I journal every day. I exercise every day. I think they're the main things. I mean, that the positive side of working for yourself and being in control of your diary is that my work starts when my exercise is done. Which, if I were, working, in a very big job, I would struggle. That would be much more difficult alongside family responsibilities and what have you. Yeah.
But hopefully the world will change and realise how important that is for a company as well as, an individual. What I was saying about the new ages is that longevity. This is a slight tangent, and but the sort of 50 plus worker has been through changes like you've been through. I've been through lots of changes and made decisions about doing things slightly differently. But we are now, the economy relies on us actually, and companies need to wake up that we're the people they should be investing in. And, health and wellness is a huge part of that, because the 50 plus need to look after themselves, because most people's health span ends at 60, and you're from 60 onwards, most people aren't healthy.
Yeah.
But talking about age as well, like looking back at you as a 31-year-old and a 41-year-old, what's changed? Do you feel more confident? You're more mindful and intentional. What's changed for you in those decades, if you like?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was like, am I more confident? I think I was pretty confident when I was 31. But it's a different kind of confidence. It's a naive confidence, isn't it? When you're in your early 30s, it never struck me that I'd be, some of these things would be a struggle, because, I felt like I'd done all the right things. I'd worked hard. I played the game. I'd done it fairly successfully. I think what I am now is more confident in my skin. Like, I'm confident in this version of myself rather than the person I think I ought to be. So I think that's the biggest change. And I give less of a shit as well. Like, just to be totally blunt about it, I'm not trying to please other people quite so much. And that is a relief. That is a real relief.
Yeah, I saw a friend, someone who interviewed on the podcast, actually, Louise Prodo. She did a great post on Instagram about being 60 and saying how great it was and how she really doesn't give a shit. And I think that's great, because, it's, we are going to be here active, making an impact. We've done it for a long time. So it's, who cares?
Yeah. And I think, the 41 question is a really good one, because I think actually at 41, I was sitting on the precipice of perimenopause. Things were changing. I wasn't quite sure where I was. I think 41-year-old women need to be really supported, because, and I think we need to treat that age like we 12-year-old girls as they're going into puberty. I think, with all that, those kid gloves and all that nurturing and lovely stuff, because, that journey between 41 and 51 is, it's a ride. So, and most people have no idea. They still walk into it.
Yeah. And it's not just the menopause, because some people, the menopause, the hormones don't do that much for you. It's the whole attitude of the world changes. Your children are growing up, if you've got children. Work, people are responding differently to you often in work, and it's very difficult to navigate that. And with that in mind, it's like, how do we then redefine midlife career success? What is it? I'm talking about new ages. Have you thought about this and how people can move on and continue to work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about following your passions as much as you can. And I do think it is about agency. As you were saying, the world of AI is opening up opportunities to create businesses, to create lifestyles, to help you to have more time to do the things you like. So for me, I feel like that's a huge opportunity for our generation, who are pretty used to change, like we're pretty malleable. We've been through the dawn of the internet, mobile technology, we've lived through all of those changes and we've adapted. Whereas, and that's the opportunity. So I think they're the things that are really there to focus on. The other thing I think is very, very important actually is it's just not sleepwalking into this next era of your life. I spend a lot of time coaching people around the fact that the job that they have to do, whatever that looks like, is just it's 30% of what you need to be focusing on. You absolutely need to be focusing on what's important to you and building a personal brand and a profile, because work comes and goes, like whether whether you create it yourself or whether you create it for other people. But what doesn't change is how you express yourself in social media, in public spaces, and that you own that, and that becomes something that you can build off in all sorts of different directions.
And actually, again, it's like, this is a question I had shared with you, but I'm just thinking about that as well as that in identity, your own personal brand is really important in a world where you see what everybody else is doing. And you could, like for me as a online fitness coach in the wellness space for midlife, for longevity, there's millions of people doing it. And really, fundamentally, the actual work itself, the creating the workout isn't that much different for each kind of person, but you are the difference, aren't you?
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter if someone's doing exactly the same thing as you. It's how you do it, and what your part of you is in the brand, and that applies across life, not just at work, I think.
100%. It's like, your flavor are you bringing to it? We all have a different way of connecting with the people who resonate with us. So we've got to work out and deliver what is our unique flavor of whatever it is, the service that you're offering. And I think that's a brand challenge. Sorry.
Yeah, mate, sorry, I keep interrupting you because I'm enthusiastic about this whole subject, but maybe more now than ever, because everything can be vanilla with AI and the life, that you have to just really sort of stick to your guns and be you. And that's in the world at work, that's in the world of relationships, of well-being, of everything, I think. And going back to my questions, you said, still thinking that is actually mine. So what advice would you give to another person who, this is kind of what we've covered, who might be feeling, we've both had portfolio careers and we know we've had time to think about our identity, but somebody in a big organization who might be coming towards thinking about leaving retirement, 55, thinking what we're going to do now, or 50. Is there any particular advice you can give them about doing what you did and, thinking that is yours, reclaiming your thinking almost?
Yeah. So I think the first thing to do is to hook into what lights you up, like work out what that is. I think that if you spend a lot of time in service of other people, whether that be in a role or as a parent, whatever it is, or as a carer, you don't spend a lot of time asking yourself what you need and what actually makes you happy. So I call that following the breadcrumbs. Like, follow the breadcrumbs of your passion and your interests as a first port of call, and then look at how you can monetize that. Okay, how can you create work around your passion? Because I think that in this time in our life, that is the most important thing. The one thing I learned from my journey is, we could all be dead very, very shortly, or we could take a long time. So what are you going to look back at? Are you going to look back at the fact that you spent your time thinking about what you should have done, or are you actually going to do the things that make you happy? Because life is short.
It really is. And I think that's where, it's really important also to be practical about things like the money and get organised, but also your own health, because the body you're in is the one that's going to take you. If you are going to live to 100 and something, which a lot of people are, then make sure that is a priority, I think, that you really, after, like you are doing your exercise daily, your meditation, it's fundamental, really. And so for you, and is there a sort of definition for you of what ultimate success looks like? We've kind of covered it, I think, but
I think I've got for me personally, I have a really clear idea of what I want success to be. I really love my work. I love being of service to people. I love being a thought leader. The PhD is really important to me. I plan to write a book as a result of that. So that's on the horizon. More speaking gigs, which I'm enjoying, and just really creating a work-life balance that allows me to follow my passions, to build a creative, connected community that supports me, and that both financially but also emotionally, if you like. But then still allowing myself to have the time to go and look after myself. Ultimately, as you say, because you only got one body. This is it. So you've got to look after it. So it's really about creating that holistic picture rather than focusing on one thing as success anymore, because I think that is a hiding to nowhere because you've got so little control over it.
Yeah, and that's irrespective of what age you are. I mean, that's something for like 25-year-olds and 55-year-olds and 75-year-olds, isn't it? Yeah. And I think maybe the younger people are learning that quicker than us because there's less certainty round, particularly now young people in the 25 sort of category. My daughter I'm talking about, it's quite hard to get work, and there's no kind of, you go in, you get a job, you get married, you have kids. That linear thing has gone completely. We're in a different model of how we go through life and age. And so for you in your next chapter, have you thoughts? Do you think beyond the here and now? Do you think, what would you like to be doing at 80, or have you? Would you like to stay where you...
I don't think I've got to 80. I haven't looked out that far yet. I'm like 10-year horizon. So, my kids are teenagers, get them out the door and happy and well, like that's a big priority for me. And then hopefully what I'm doing at the moment is setting myself up an ecosystem for this next era of my life. It may be, hopefully it will be a body of work and that I can dip into as much as I want to or need to. And maybe as I, get a bit older, maybe I'll do less of that and more of other things. But ultimately, I don't see myself stopping working because I love it. I enjoy the work I'm doing. And I think it has a benefit.
I think it does too. And I think it's a very common theme for a lot of us in the sort of 50s, 60s category to be creating now, in the same way that we were the women who decided we weren't going to work, we were going to change how we work when we had children. I remember being one of the first people to ask to go part-time at Woman's Own. And it was a real, what's part-time? I've got a baby and I live in out an hour away. And anyway, it all worked out and we drove all of that. And I think we're the same women who are making the change for the next chapter, for the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, however long we want to work. I don't see anybody I know wanting to stop work and talking about retirement. It's like, and if they do retire, they do something totally different and create a business and a world and an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I think there's a revolution going on in the workplace and in the well-being space.
Yeah,
I love it. You're driving it with your brand.
Well, I wonder how companies will adapt to this because, ultimately it's, there's a huge amount of resource and value that this generation can bring to the workplace, but it just doesn't look 9 to 5. Like it just doesn't, so what does that look like? And I don't know any companies that are really facing into that.
I think they will very quickly have to. I saw a thing from the Global Wellness Institute that said, about the older people, the people they're going to have to rely on economically. It's a big trend. It's a big move forward to get older people into the workspace. And that means working part-time, working flexibly, managing your health as well, as much as you manage your work, and be mentors to the people who are, younger than you to also do the same so that could continue on,
Yeah.
So I think it's but I love what you're doing and the work you're doing. Is there anything else you can tell us about the next chapter and your where people can find you and your book that is coming up? And
yeah, absolutely. So my main place is LinkedIn. So Sandra Peat on LinkedIn. That's where I publish most of my thinking at the minute. Obviously, there are more coming in the pipeline as things progress. But yeah, LinkedIn is the main place to find me at the moment.
Yeah, well, I will be sharing this podcast on LinkedIn. And I've really enjoyed talking to you because, as I said, for us, Reinvention, our products at the moment is around, we do a lot of fitness stuff, but it's much bigger than that. It's much more about people who are older, having a voice, having a space, creating and continuing to lead the way, be the trailblazers and keep making the changes that make your life and other people's lives better.
Yeah, bring it on. Keep doing it. Do great work.
Thank you, Sandra. It's been brilliant talking to you today. I really enjoyed it, and I will look forward to sharing it with everybody else.
Lovely. Good chatting with you, Fiona. Cheers.
Thank you.